Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
I'm Shannon Lawrence.
And I'm MB Partlow.
Quick content warning before we get started. This podcast may contain language and disturbing content, so enter at your own risk. Hi.
Hello.
It's kind of a dreary Sunday right now.
I am loving it. I like changing weather. Yeah. I mean, I like warm weather. I like cold weather. I like all the weather in between.
If it switches around so I can't get bored with it.
Exactly.
Because if it stays hot all summer, then you're just like, drudge.
And slightly homicidal. So, yeah. I like having a nice, cool, overcast day.
Yeah. Me too. The barbecue place in Walsenburg closed.
No.
Yeah.
That was good.
And I went to the new barbecue place that replaced Billy Sims.
How was?
It's called Ozzy's. It was good. It was good. They only had two kinds of sauce, but they were both good because one was a mustard and one was like a spicy
nice
barbecue. And they had collard greens there and they had a lot of heat, which was yummy.
I can't wait to try it.
You can tell, like, when you walk in there, everything is still the same from when it was Billy Sims. Mm-hmm. And, like, they've taken out the mini boards and just put up whiteboards for now. So, like, I feel like they spent all their money getting this.
Yes.
And, and outside, it's just like, they paid for a banner that's up there. But, yeah, well, it was good. Like, Joffrey's had, because they had a green chili mac as a side. And they had cornbread and it was good and nice and moist. So it was like at one point, I'm going to go buy some more cornbread.
I'm gonna see if I can't get there this week.
Yeah.
That would be good.
It was nice.
I'm also hoping I will get to see the Barbie movie this week.
Oh, yeah.
Haven't done that yet. If you want, I will let you know when I'm going.
Yeah, let me know. Guess what?
What?
I have an item on pink clothing.
It's Yay!
That hot pink and black stripy. I wore it to conference one year.
I would probably remember it when I saw it.
Yes. It's from Unique Vintage. It's one of the, but it's not my big flary rockabillys that I wear the thingies under. The thingies.
So next weekend, do you know what I'm doing next weekend?
What?
I'm doing the Mud Girl Fun Run.
Oh, wow.
It's running. Yeah. Get your laughs out now. Slogging, walking briskly. Anyway, it's the one with the inflatable obstacles and all the mud you have to go through. So I signed up for it months ago because I don't like nor trust a lot of people, but there are a handful of people who, if they go, do you wanna? I just go, yeah, you're one of them. Fortunately, you haven't gotten me into anything too hairy, but yeah.
Plots.
Yet. But I'm just like, dee. There used to be, so that's what I'm doing next weekend. So I'll have something to talk about the following weekend, provided I survive, which I think I will. It's mud.
It's cushiony.
I'm not made out of shit or sugar, so I won't melt. So.
Shit melt in mud?
It melts in water. Oh, and next week I'm going to be talking about something melting. Not this week, but that'll be next week.
I had more fun facts because I'm still reading that gory details. I posted the cockroach one yesterday.
Yes, you did.
People love that. No, they don't. No. There are some people who appreciated it. But I was reading about the rats in sewers in D.C. because the writer of the book actually they were getting rats in the walls and they couldn't get them to stop and they didn't know why. And then they finally got somebody to look back behind the wall and there was a uncapped sewer pipe.
Oh.
And so the rats, it was a 3-inch pipe. But a rat can fit anywhere they can fit their head.
Yep.
That's one of the things they're famous for. So the rats, it's a whole rat family. She went into a lot of detail about all this. But anyway, rats have this big family, right? So you've got the whole nest, basically, coming in there. Ick. So they capped it, and they think like 2 rats were remaining inside when they capped it. So they just died in the walls because she put poison in there.
Oh, that smells so good.
And it brought the flies, yeah. So the house was full of carrion flies, like to the point that she freaked out. And
yuck.
Yeah, and she called her husband because he was out of town, and he's like, all right, go down the basement. She was like, no.
smart woman.
That's right. And then he's like, okay, go outside and open the basement door from the outside. And turn on your headlights on bright at the back. And she did, because even flies, most bugs are drawn to light. And so it actually pulled a bunch of them out, and then she shut herself in. But she had to wait for like all the generations to die off once the corpses were no longer there to feed on, right? So basically she just had to wait it out. But anyway, the fun fact was that there are open sewers or whatever they're called, and it's where it's all connected in the same system. So here's your sewage, and here's your drainage from outside. So the rats are going to go in for those. And then, so they just, and rats can subsist on even human feces because there's undigested food in them always.
You also, and Nikki in your fun facts.
In that chapter about cockroaches getting into your crevices, leeches can get into will go in any crevice. And I was sitting there and I was like, I don't like that fact, because when I was a kid, we'd go swimming in the lake, Lake Elkhorn in Columbia, Maryland, and just get out of the water. I didn't even know what they were at the time, and just pick off all the little black leeches and then go about, and I'm like, I think could have just been inside something.
We called them bloodsuckers. We didn't call them leeches, but
I was like, ew, and I picked them off. And
there was one swimming hole that somebody always took a salt shaker to. If we were all going to go to it was called the bend because it was a big bend in the river. If we were going swimming at the bend, somebody always brought a salt shaker. So when you got out, everybody kind of scanned each other, and if you had one, you poured salt on it, and it shriveled up and boink, fell off.
Boink. I just pulled them off.
Because
I'm like, I don't know if it leaves behind like xenomorph teeth, but it didn't cause any
Well, it
damage.
was the fact that when you tried to pull, because these were, an inch long or so, but when you pulled them, if they had been there a while and they were fat and they stretched and they broke.
And nobody liked that.
No. Surprisingly, no. Probably somebody did, but they didn't admit it.
But no.
No. So, yeah. But when we went to the mill pond, it was fast-moving water, so you didn't have to worry.
Okay.
About the bloodsuckers.
I think that our problem was that we were at the dam, so we would play in the dam. It had a little waterfall that went down, but other than that, it was blocking them, so they were probably all just kind of currents brought them up there, and then they just chilled there.
They just
at
hung
the
out,
dam. The
waiting
dam
for you.
That's right. So, yeah, I'm reading that every time I sit down and read that book, and then Jeffrey gets, Jeffrey, listen to this. I was like, you understand, this is my anime, which is my daughter's thing. I was like, this is the thing that I'll talk about when I read Mary Roach's Stiff. I did the same damn thing.
I have shared that book a lot.
Yeah.
Because it was so good.
It's good.
And people are like, when I try to tell people what it's like, I said it's about what happens to a dead body. And they're like, ew. And I'm like, no, it's not. I said, it's a lot of different pieces and parts. It's like, I said, it talks about the body farm.
Yeah.
And it talks about, what happens to your body when you die, and
death stats.
All kinds of deaths, cool death stuff.
Yeah. No, this one's groovy too. And there was a whole chapter on necrophilia in the animal world, because humans are not the only ones.
Is it all animals or only specific animals?
Well, the big one, it starts with a crow. It starts with a crow that some people study in crows. It's because crows have a funeral if something dies. If one of their people dies, right?
Right.
They hold funerals. They're known to do this. Well, apparently sometimes they will also get jiggy with it. So, so they were sitting and there was this crow corpse, and then this crow lands, and they're waiting for they're like, ooh, we get to watch like a funeral thing. Nope. They were like, it strutted up and it looked around, and then it was like, boom. It just hit it. And then there was an infamous story among scientists anyway about a mallard duck. And
not ducks.
Yeah. Mallard duck, 75 minutes. 75 minutes a male duck went at a male duck's corpse. 75 minutes. That's why it's infamous.
That's some stamina right there.
But squirrels are known.
Well,
squirrels, I know. See, I'm like, it just keeps proving me out. Evil little fuckers.
Yeah, they are.
And what else? I mean, obviously apes and stuff. Sadly, the smarter animals are also the ones that do necrophilia. So go figure. But there is one species of animal where it is productive still to commit necrophilia, but they don't actually commit it that way. There's a certain Amazon frog that will, if there's a dead female, can squeeze them. So they squeeze the eggs out and then they can still fertilize the eggs and still make babies. So it is actually productive for them to do a little necrophilia.
I need a noise to make when I'm just kind of horrified beyond words. So kind of a sad little squealing noise. Ew. Something beyond ew.
There were like human stats in there, and those got read to Jeffrey too.
Of course.
Because they're like 90-something% of necrophiliacs are male, and I was like, duh. First of all, way easier for them to pull off. just if we look at the dynamics of it, that's, but also, duh.
Well, now, remember in Clerks.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember a movie Joe Bob did Necromantic.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And it was so gross.
You can't spell necromancer without romance.
That's right.
Joe Bob this weekend, I think it was yesterday, was at an event with Sven Gulli.
Oh, yeah?
There was some con going on that they were both going to, no.
Oh.
But that they were both going to be at. So it's like, oh, that would be everything all in one.
I would just need also Cassandra Peterson / Elvira.
Yes.
Joe Bob isn't his real name either.
No.
I forgot what it is, though.
Just like Sven Gulli's name isn't actually Sven Gulli.
I've loved Elvira a lot longer than either of the other two have been on my radar, so.
Yes.
Her name I know.
I love her. I love seeing her do an interview as Cassandra Peterson.
Yeah.
Because when she does one as Elvira, she's obviously in character. And she's kind of got that giggle and that she's got it down. Because when she is just herself, she's fucking frighteningly smart.
Yeah.
And she knows what she's about.
We've been watching reality shows. So, what is it? I think it's called Temptation Island, but I could be wrong because there's like a billion that are the same. I think we watched Temptation Island. And it's, it's all these hot singles get put on this island, but they think they're on a different talk show, like a different show. And it's just we're going to get hot on this island. And then they get told they're all there partying and they've chosen who they're going to go after and all this shit. And then they're like, now, you guys are stuck here and you may not touch, may not kiss, may not do any of this stuff because you have to forge real relationships here. And there is a money pot at the end, but each time you break the rules, we take away X amount of money.
Oh.
Yeah. So we just finished that one.
I'd be surprised if there was any money left at the end.
So it started at $200,000. At one point, it got way below $100,000, but they gave them an opportunity to earn some of it back if two people who were breaking all the rules and costing all that money could behave for one night in a suite with everything they needed to get romantic.
Ooh.
If they did not break the rules, then the money will be put back in.
Did they?
They did not break the rules.
Oh,
she sure tried to get him too, though. The whole night was her just trying to, and him just being like, I can't do this, but he did it.
At some point, there was a show called F-Boy Island. And I looked at that and I went, huh. And I watched the preview and I'm like, yeah, it was basically Fuckboy Island, but because it was TV, they called it F-Boy Island. I was like, who can't figure that out?
I don't know. What's this about?
Gee, I can't imagine. What is going to happen?
Our new season of, what's it called? Crime Scene Kitchen is on.
And is Reservation Dogs back?
Yeah, I'm afraid to watch it because it says it's the last season.
I know.
And I was like, I'm not going to start it yet.
I know.
It's going to be my reward for finishing a writing assignment, I think. And then I can just sit down and binge watch it.
Did you like Good Omens?
Yeah.
Because the second, and I'm like, there's no second book. Who the hell is writing this? Well, I think, Gaiman is involved in it, so.
Yeah, he seems to be.
It's probably, and it has the two actors. I love them both.
Yeah.
David Tennant and
Michael Sheen.
Michael Sheen. I love him.
Mm-hmm.
He has so much range because he plays the insane incarcerated murderer dad on, don't remember the name of the show, because it was like on CBS.
Oh, yeah.
And then they moved it to CBS Plus, and I said, fuck you very much.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so I don't remember what it's called, but I was watching it too. Is it something Son? It's something
Prodigal Son,
Prodigal
maybe?
Son, yeah. I believe it is.
Yeah, because it was his son.
I didn't know that was still on. I think I watched one season of it.
And then it moved to CBS Plus.
That's probably. Well, I didn't have CBS to begin with, so it was streaming somewhere. And then when it moved to CBS Plus, it must have stolen it, obviously, from wherever was streaming it before.
How dare that? Because it was good. I enjoyed watching
Netflix. It. So, my eyes are so itchy from allergies.
I'm so sorry.
I was hoping because it rained it would be better, but it's not better.
The humidity today is like 50%.
It's so gross.
I'm not going to complain about it because it's normally so dry here and I complain about that all the fucking time. So now that it's humid, I'm like, I'll just suck it up and deal.
Do you enjoy going to the grocery store? If so, this message is not for you. But if you're like me and procrastinate going to the store, Instacart is a fantastic option to ensure you no longer have to. Save yourself a trip and go through Instacart, where you can get a delivery through a personal shopper in as little as 1 hour. My experiences have been great so far, with my personal shopper texting me before substituting another product, letting me know when they were on their way to my house, and letting me know it had been delivered, all via text. If you click on our affiliate link in the show notes or on our website, you get free delivery on your first order over $35, and you help out our show at the same time. It's the perfect time to give it a try.
Would you like me to get started?
Yep.
Okay, so it's just gross. This is a really horrible human being. So, sometimes you come across a story that's so convoluted, it's like a William Faulkner novel, and trying to figure out who's related to who. So I would like to point out that I just used my bachelor's degree in English some 39 years after I got it by making the Faulkner reference. Go me.
Good job.
It was worth the money. It was not. And I really, so after I thought about that, I was like, oh, it would be great if I could compare this guy to some Shakespearean character or to some great villain. But yeah. So, which led me down a minor rabbit hole of how many words and phrases Shakespeare invented. He invented things like the word auspicious. He invented bedazzled. Not vajazzled, but bedazzled. Brave New World. And my favorite, Shakespeare coined the phrase in a pickle. But he didn't invent chucklefuck or heinous flaming asshole. So I couldn't make a good reference there. So, Franklin Delano Floyd was born in Barnesville, Georgia, which is outside of Atlanta, in 1943. So I can only imagine he was named for the man who was president at the time. He was the youngest of 5 children, and his father was a mill worker and an alcoholic, and he died when Franklin was barely a year old. His father was 32 years old, and the widow that he left behind with 5 children was only 29. I'm trying to imagine being 29 and having 5 kids.
Fuck that.
The look on your face was worth that. So the mom's name was Della, and she had a lot of trouble making ends meet. No shocker there. So she and her children moved in with her mother in a small apartment that was above a grocery store. After 15 months, Della's parents asked her to leave. When she reached out to the county welfare department, the social workers recommended that she put her children into the Georgia Baptist Children's Home, which she did. The home had a reputation for being very strict, but the children did attend school and they attended church, and they were, for the most part, healthy. Now, they worked like a dog when they weren't in school.
Oh, sure.
They worked the fields, but for the time, they were considered well cared for here. However, when she tried to visit her children a few months later, she was denied. When she tried again the next year, she was told she could see them in September, then not again till the following year.
Was she given a reason for this?
In essence, the state believed that the children now belonged to the home and told Della to leave them alone. They're here, they're fine, they're happy, leave them alone.
Wow.
Yeah. She kept, I will say, While her children were in this home, she kept writing letters and petitioning to get to see them. She kept being denied, but she did keep trying.
Yeah.
So Franklin was considered to be a bright but sensitive boy. He was bullied constantly by other boys who thought he was feminine. He claimed to have been sexually brutalized from the time he was 6. And he may have been, I'm not saying he wasn't, but it was his word only. There was not other people corroborating that. But after he became a troublemaker, picking fights, stealing, trying to run away. Now, here we call into question, how good a care did this home take of them? They caught him masturbating, and so they dipped his hand in hot water as punishment.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like first-rate care to me.
It's like what my husband trying to reaching up toward the stove or whatever, and they were like, all right, and so they put his hand on the stove to teach him not to do it again while it was on. Yeah, that's abuse.
Yeah. Okay, so in 1959, at age 16, Franklin ran away and broke into a local house looking for food. When he was caught, they contacted his older sister, Dorothy. She had already married. She had 2 kids of her own. She's living in North Carolina. And they told her, if you take him in, we won't press charges against him. So she did. Because she was a nice sister. But then she kicked him out. At some point, she had enough. He had a lot of issues, so she kicked him out. And he went searching for his mother. He found her working as a sex worker in Indianapolis and convinced her to help him forge papers so he could join the Army. Which, that's not that uncommon, especially back then. I believe we have people in our family who did. Usually it was they were 17, not quite 18, and so parents signed. But anyway, he was 16. The lie only lasted for 6 months. I don't even know how, but the Army figured out it was a forgery and he wasn't as old as he was supposed to be, and they kicked him out. This was in California. So he broke into a Sears and tried to steal a gun. That is not the softer side of Sears.
No.
The police showed up quickly. There was a shootout and he was shot in the stomach. He survived emergency surgery and was sent to a youth detention facility for a year.
Yikes.
Back then, I'm just the idea of having to have that surgery is... So in 1962... Franklin returned to the Atlanta area and got a job at the Atlanta airport. Yay. Except in June of that year, he kidnapped a 4-year-old girl from a local bowling alley, took her into the woods, and sexually assaulted her. He was arrested, convicted, and sent to prison for a term of 10 to 20 years. And while he was there, he was moved to another prison for psychiatric testing. I could not find what they were testing him for, what the results were. Yeah. But anyway. In 1963, he was being taken out of the prison for what was called a medical errand. So I don't know if this was part of that testing or not. He escaped custody long enough to rob a bank. As one does. So he was caught and convicted. What a surprise. This time he was sent to a federal prison in Chillicothe, Ohio. Which we've talked about that town before because... The Chillicothe Six, who were a group of sex workers who were murdered in a very small span of time in that town. That town is...
Not a good one.
No. After a failed escape attempt, he was transferred to another federal prison in Pennsylvania, where he was abused again by the other inmates to the point of trying to attempt suicide. He climbed up on the roof and said he was going to jump off. And I'm like, you know what? If you're a child molester and you go to prison for it, that's what happened. You get abused. You get what you did happens to you.
Yeah.
It's kind of
karmic.
Kind of balances out the universe a little bit. I'm like, I would have been down there yelling jump. But he was transferred back to Georgia where he met and befriended a man named David Dial. So, fun fact, I tried to track down David Dial, because I wanted to see what were his crimes. What did he do? Do you know how many fucking criminals there are named David Dial?
As many as his name Shannon Lawrence, probably.
It was incredible to me. It was like every state has a David Dial who committed like a biggish crime. Like they weren't mass murderers or serial killers, but bigger. So I came up blank on that one because I couldn't be certain I had the right one. So, and David Dial is going to come back into the picture later. In November of 1972, which was less than 10 years after he raped that 4-year-old girl, he was released from prison to a halfway house. So remember, November he went to the halfway house. He was released from the halfway house in January. So
much for 10 to 20 years.
Yeah, 10 to 20 years and halfway house. Yeah, they did him a lot of good. He was released from the halfway house in January of 73, and 1 week later he abducted a woman from a gas station and attempted to rape her, but she was able to escape. She fought back.
She wasn't 4 years old.
She wasn't 4 years old, so she escaped. He was caught and arrested, but he convinced David Dial, who was also out of prison now, to post bail. It's good to have friends, I guess. But Franklin didn't show up at the hearing, so now he's a fugitive. In 1974, Franklin was using the name Brandon Williams when he met a woman named Sandra Brandenburg in North Carolina. I'm going to be specifically vague because there were some differing stories about how they met. So I'm just going to give you the bare bones. Sandra Brandenburg in North Carolina. She had a daughter, Suzanne Marie Savakis, who was by her first husband. And then she had daughters, Allison and Amy Brandenburg, with her second husband, and also a son named Philip, but they called him Stevie Brandenburg. I don't know either. Franklin and Sandra married a month after they met. There may have been an issue that she felt she was going to have her children taken away from her. Mm-hmm. So she needed a husband. Don't know. Did they meet at a truck stop? Did they meet in church? There are several different stories. That was one of them, that they met in church, and she was crying and he said, "What's wrong? How can I help?" I'm like, yeah, because he's all about helping people. So Franklin moved the whole family to Dallas. So in 1975, just a year later, Sandra spent 30 days in jail for passing bad checks. When she returned home, nobody was there. Husband's gone, kids are gone. Right. Nobody's there. So she was able to track down Allison and Amy through a local church-based social services group and got those two girls back. She could not locate Suzanne or Stevie. When she attempted to file kidnapping charges, she was told that because he was their stepfather, he had the right to take the children. So the two girls, Sandra and her two daughters, I say Sandra and her two daughters, it's really her two daughters, didn't know the fate of Stevie until 2019, when a man came forward saying he thought he might be the missing child, and DNA tests proved he was Stevie. Wow. It turned out that he had been adopted in North Carolina when he was very young. But when you're reading these, the focus is really on Franklin, where it should be. He was the big bad here. However, there's an indistinctness in this case as to whether, when she was in jail, Franklin put him up for adoption, or whether Sandra gave birth, couldn't deal, and she put him up for adoption and told her daughters that he was dead.
Okay.
But Stevie's okay. Stevie's the only one who comes out of this okay.
All right.
So, Franklin raised Suzanne as his daughter, and every time he was questioned, he had a different story of how he came to have custody of this girl. Oh, her parents abandoned her. Oh, I found her. Oh, always had a different story. They did find a school registration for her in 1975 under the name of Suzanne Davis in Oklahoma City. In 1986, when Franklin was using the name Warren Marshall, Suzanne graduated high school in Forest Park, Georgia under the name of Sharon Marshall. She had earned, this just fucking killed me, she had earned a full college scholarship to study aerospace engineering.
Wow.
Yeah.
And yet?
Especially because, first of all, full college rides are not that easy to come by. And that's a very tough field. Even tougher than for women to get into. But she told a friend she was pregnant and her father wouldn't allow her to go. So she had the baby, and the baby was immediately placed for adoption. Suzanne moved to Tampa with Franklin and became an exotic dancer.
Great.
Mm-hmm. And this is where she had her son, Anthony Michael Hughes, in 1988. They were using the name Clarence Marcus Hughes and Tanya Dawn Hadlock when they were married in New Orleans in 1989. So he raised can you say Woody Allen?
Yeah.
He raised this girl as his daughter and then married her. And she was like 18. There was not any... There's no doubt in my mind. She didn't have any choice in any of this.
No.
So...
One also wonders whose kid it was.
Yeah. So they had another daughter, Megan, who was born in New Orleans, also immediately placed for adoption. From New Orleans, they moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where Suzanne worked in a strip club. She had wanted to leave Franklin, but was scared he would kill her and their son. Somehow he was able to join the Fraternal Order of Police, even though he had never been a police officer, obviously. I mean, he's wanted, for God's sake. He must have been a smooth talker. But he told her, if you try to leave, I will just use my contacts and track you down. You will never get away from me. In Suzanne of 1990. No, in April. Good
Year
God.
of Suzanne.
Let's start that one again. In April of 1990, Suzanne decided to make a run for it with a man named Kevin Brown, who was a college student she'd been having an affair with. But shortly after making the plan, like within a month, she was discovered crumpled on the side of the road. Hit and run accident, groceries are scattered around her, and police thought that she had walked from the motel where they were staying, she and Franklin, to a convenience store and was carrying groceries back when she got hit by a car. She was rushed to the hospital, but unfortunately died. When Franklin showed up the next day, he claimed he had been sleeping at the motel when she left to get the groceries. Despite this, he was considered a suspect in her death. The two of them were also suspected in the disappearance of a woman named Cheryl Ann Comesso, a dancer who worked with Suzanne and had confronted Franklin. We're going to come back to her in a minute. So Franklin put their son, Michael, into foster care.
Because it worked so well for him.
Yes. However, the foster parents reported signs of severe trauma and emotional disturbances. But they were able to help him make progress. Apparently having a loving home, who knew? He was able to make a lot of progress. So they began adoption proceedings in 1994. As it happens, at that moment in time, Franklin was back in custody because of a parole violation. So as part of the adoption proceedings, a DNA test was done to confirm paternity. Franklin was not the boy's father.
Huh.
How the hell she found time to have an affair with somebody? Anyway. When he was released and tried to regain custody, he was denied on the grounds of his criminal record and the fact he had
not his father.
He was no biological relation whatsoever. So this was in 1994. So in September of 94, when Michael, this poor kid, was in first grade, Franklin showed up at the school and forced the principal at gunpoint to take him to Michael's classroom. Franklin kidnapped them both in his truck. He later let the principal out in a wooded area and handcuffed him to a tree and drove off. The principal was rescued. He was okay. 2 months later, when Franklin was arrested in Kentucky, Michael was not with him. Michael has disappeared completely. There are a lot of different stories. A lot of witnesses have come forward saying, yes, he told me X. Yes, he told me Y. He told me he put the child in protective custody with someone he knew. He told me he put the child in the foster system. He told me he killed the child. I saw him bury the child. There's all these stories. It's believed at some point, they do believe that he killed the child.
Oh. Then what's the point in getting him from the foster home? Just leave him.
Yeah. No, if he can't.
Yeah, if I can't have you, nobody can.
Or if the foster system fucked me over and it's not fucking you over, then you can't stay in it.
Yeah.
So we're going to go back to Cheryl Ann. She disappeared in 1989 after arguing with Franklin outside the club where she worked with Suzanne, and witnesses said they had seen Franklin punch her in the face. So after she disappeared, so did Franklin and Suzanne, whose trailer mysteriously burned to the ground. And they investigated, it was arson. It was a purposeful fire. They fled to Oklahoma. In 1995, a landscaper found skeletal remains that later turned out to be Cheryl Ann. But the key to the case, Jesus, was a mechanic in Kansas who bought a truck at auction. He found an envelope full of 97 photos stuffed between the truck bed and the gas tank. I can only imagine this guy when he opens this packet of pictures. Several showed a bound woman who had been severely beaten. So they were able to trace the truck to Franklin, who had stolen it in Oklahoma in 94 but abandoned it in Texas a month later. Investigators were able to match the injuries in the photos to the injuries on their Jane Doe, which allowed them to ID Cheryl Ann. To further make their case, what a fucking dumbass. The furniture and other belongings in the photo clearly belonged to Franklin.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, dumbass. He was arrested and convicted of her murder, all due to those photographs that just happened to be found. The pictures, sadly, they were not just of Cheryl Ann. They were able to see that he had been sexually abusing Suzanne they figured about age 4. So in September of 2014, Franklin confessed that he had killed Michael and told authorities where the body was hidden. Of course, he told authorities where the body was hidden. Despite the search, no body was ever found. Franklin received the death penalty. The case dragged on for years while the courts argued whether or not he was mentally competent. And I talked to you about this earlier. Investigative reporter Matt Burbeck published a book called A Beautiful Child in 2004, detailing the story of Franklin Floyd and Cheryl Marshall and the killing of Cheryl Ann. But when this book came out, it was apparently very popular and it kicked off this huge public interest in finding out, because apparently he was able to tell when he was writing this book, they figured out that was not her real name. Sharon Marshall was not her real name. So he got the FBI to reopen the case in 2011. It was in that 2014 interview where he confessed to having killed the boy that he told authorities Sharon's identity was actually Suzanne Savakis. And Burbeck published the second half of the story in the 2018 book, Finding Sharon. So Franklin died this year, wow. 2023, while on death row at the age of 79.
Bye.
I was like, that's
way too long a life.
It's too long a life and too easy a death.
Yeah.
I don't know what he died of. They said natural causes.
Yeah.
But his lawyer, and at some point, and there were points where he was in the criminal justice system and had a hard time finding someone to represent him. Shocker.
Gosh.
But it was just one thing. As I read this, it was really hard because when I first read about this, and it might have been a clickbait article, it didn't make any sense to me because it kept jumping around.
Right.
Because there are so many aspects of it. And I said, no, I have to find a way to tell this that makes sense chronologically. Not that it makes sense what he did. But,
right, but so it can be pieced together.
But yeah, so you can kind of see the flow of how it worked. He did so many horrible things, but the thing that got him, that he was only connected to by luck, was the killing of Cheryl Ann Camasso. And because of the pictures that were found. And I mean, what if the guy, because there are people who would have thrown them away, or there are people who would have maybe burned them. There are a sad few who probably would have sold them.
And there are a few that would have kept them.
Yeah. But this guy turned him in, and I didn't see his name anywhere. He probably didn't want anything to do with it. So my sources for this were Wikipedia, a website called Education First, some excerpts from A Beautiful Child by Matt Burbeck, and the Tampa Bay Times.
Okay.
And if anybody wants to see more about this, there's certainly plenty out there. Although I've covered the bases. So what do you got? Tell me
I'm
something.
swinging it in a different direction.
Good. Thank you.
I haven't done a paranormal one in a while. I started with several other paranormal ones, and then as soon as I started researching stuff on them, I was like, nope. Look at that. None of it's real. So,
right?
I'm doing 2 poltergeist stories. So the first one is either Jaboticabal or Yaboticabal poltergeist, because it is Brazilian.
Ah, okay.
But I don't know if they speak Portuguese or what there. So I don't know what the rules are. Rules out the window.
It also might be one of those countries where they speak more than one language.
Yes. In December 1965, a Catholic Brazilian family started experiencing rocks or bricks, like different stories said different things.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with rocks ultimately, because it's way easier than saying rocks or bricks every time. Falling out of nowhere inside their home. They would just boop, materialize in the air and fall to the ground. The couple put them outside, thinking, more fell, right? The heaviest was 3.7 kilos, or about 8 pounds when I looked it up. At first, they thought someone was pranking them with items from their own yard because they had these similar rocks outside. But outside, the rock pile never changed. And it was said that over 300 rocks fell inside the house. That pile would have just kept getting bigger.
That would have hurt if an 8-pound rock fell on you.
Right. Now, at that point, it wasn't. But we'll get there. So they also said that one of the larger rocks broke into pieces, and when they picked up the pieces, they appeared to be magnetized and connected back perfectly. Their 11-year-old daughter, Maria Jose Ferreira, started getting hit with the rocks. So she was getting pelted. They hadn't been before. And no one else in the household experienced this. At no point did they start getting hit with the rocks. The Ferreiras called their priest who performed an exorcism. Unfortunately, the exorcism didn't take.
Can you exorcise ghosts?
Well, this is poltergeist activity, so, but no, like,
but
it would be but they would have thought it was a demon. They were Catholic.
Oh, well, okay.
Right? That's where that would go. That's just a Catholic spirit. There's your Catholic poltergeist as a demon. The Ferreiras had a neighbor named João Volpe. He was a dentist by trade, but was also known to be a medium. He witnessed some of the happenings, and he started hanging around more like, hey, this is pretty cool, right? I'm going to watch this. And he stated that Maria must also be a medium, and that's why she was being attacked. They were drawn to her specifically.
Okay.
Some reports said Maria moved in with him so he could study her and figure out what was going on. Again, she was 11, and I was like,
ick.
Oh, you know what, though? And the thing is, I was confused at first because I thought maybe she wasn't their kid, she was their servant, because a couple of articles were like, yeah, she lived in the servant quarters. And I'm like, but it says that she's their child. So anyway, a lot of weird information. And 1965 isn't that long ago, but...
I will say, at one point, Joe and his family lived in a house that had servants' quarters.
Yeah.
And some of the kids, that's where their
bedrooms
bedrooms
were. I would have totally been like, I'm living out here.
Yep.
My private space. That's why I was in the basement. I chose that room. He claimed there were a bunch of entities hanging around her. It wasn't just one, and that most of them were good, but there were also evil ones. With his assistance, Maria started communicating with whatever, the entity or entities, and she could ask it to bring, she'd be like, I would really love a sweet right now. And sometimes it would bring fruit, and sometimes candy would appear. And this would materialize out of thin air. It's not like you watched it walking along. When she asked for flowers, they showed up. At one point, she asked for a brooch, and one appeared. But with the good came the bad.
I'm thinking, wow, think of the things you could ask for.
And now I'm like, I would really love some chocolate mousse with whipped cream right now.
Yeah.
And there it would be. The entity or entities started attacking her in other ways. Eggs materialized and flew at her. I was like, whose chicken coop was being raided for this shit? She received slaps, scratches, and bites. She sported bruises all over her body. It was said the exorcism had actually pissed off whatever it was.
Okay.
And that's why the attacks on Maria started escalating. At one point, she woke up with a glass sealed over her nose and mouth. She was suffocating. Woke up because she couldn't breathe. She was able to struggle free. Now, furniture started lifting up and flying at her. A cylinder of some sort was wrenched off the wall and thrown at her. It said it was a gas cylinder. The furniture being thrown consisted of large objects. So we're not talking like a vase. We're talking a couch.
Okay. Yikes.
Next, it was needles appearing under the skin in her left heel. These weren't seen being applied, but she would wake up with them in her foot. The family would remove the needles only to have more appear later. When they tried to put bandages on her foot, the bandages would be ripped off. They tried to knot them, it would be unknotted and ripped off. In one incident, they reported removing over 50 needles from her heel in one go.
That had to hurt like hell.
Yep. Very bloody. As if this wasn't bad enough, the situation reached a peak on March 14th, 1966, when she was sitting at school eating lunch and burst into flames. At the same time...
Wait, what?
That's what I said. Burst into flames at the lunch table. At the same time, back at home, the neighbor Volpe also burst into flames. His burns ended up being far worse than hers.
They just fucking burst into flames.
Yep.
Wow. That was not what I was expecting you said. She was at school when she
burst into flames.
Okay. You have my attention now.
Oh, now.
In case you didn't have it earlier, you certainly have it now.
So at this point, Volpe went, yeah, I'm not qualified for this. So he referred the family to a famous medium named Chico Xavier, or Javier, but it's an X. Xavier owned the Spiritist Center and eagerly took Maria in, because fascinating, right? He's like, yeah. Xavier's determination was that Maria had been a witch in a past life and that her many victims had come back to exact their revenge on her. She had used black magic on them, ending their lives, and now they wanted her to pay. Several months after her arrival at Xavier's Center, she was sent home with the declaration that he had removed all the spirits and she was now free. Maria was now 13 years old. Mm-hmm. It had been 2 years of this going on. As soon as she arrived home, it all started up again. Maria feared it would never end for her, and after 2 years of dealing with attacks from invisible entities, Maria was found dead in her room, having put a pesticide into a drink.
Oh, that's awful.
Yep, the autopsy confirmed suicide. She had only been home for 3 days.
Oh, God.
The family never heard from the entities again. All of it stopped. But, again, poltergeist classically seem to manifest around young girls.
Adolescent.
Yep.
God, that's terrible. That's a terrible story.
I know. Now for a more recent poltergeist haunting. It's still 20 years ago, but still. It's not 1960s. In 1998, a man named Al Cobb, who lived in Savannah, Georgia, got an antique bed for his son, Jason, who was 14. The bed dated from sometime in the late 1800s. Within a couple of nights of sleeping in the bed, Jason felt something leaning on his pillow. He said it felt like somebody had gotten on their elbows and just kind of was leaning over him. And then cool air was breathed across his neck. He told his parents, but they told him he'd clearly been dreaming and blew it off. I was like, I could just picture, go to bed.
Yep.
It was a dream. Go to bed. But next time he walked into his room, a photo of his grandpa had been laid down. Every time he fixed it, the photo would be face down again when he came back into his room. An eye-opener came when Jason walked into his room to find a bunch of his toys laid out on his new bed. His tiger and zebra beanie babies had been arranged next to a shell dinosaur, a plaster toucan, and a conch. He called his family into the room, and Al called out, "Do we have a Casper here?" He waited for an answer, but none came. The dad of at least 2 boys, because Jason was a twin, he knew what to do, right? So he left a paper and some crayons on the bed, asked the spirit to tell them its name and age, gave it a minute, nothing happened. He said, all right, let's get out of the room, and we'll come back in. When they returned, Danny 7 had been written on the paper. Other activity began around this time, too. It spread throughout the house, not just Jason's room. Furniture would move, drawers would open. The name Jill was spelled out using posters on the wall, and candles would light on their own. While Elle kept asking Danny questions, Jason started revealing who the other spirits were after communicating with them. He said there was a man named Uncle Sam who wanted his daughter back. She'd been buried where the house now stood. He said he was there to get her. Gracie Wilson was a little girl who they connected with the famous sculpture in Bonaventure Cemetery, so I'll post a picture of that. They also felt Jill was a spirit all her own and had put her name up there. Both Jill and Danny communicated in writing. Danny said his mom had died in the bed in 1899, and no one else was allowed to sleep in it. And I was like, wow, he wrote real well for a 7-year-old.
From 1899.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Jill wrote a note inviting them to a party she was throwing in their living room. Like, come to a party in your living room. Nobody knows how old Jill was. Jason, who had started sleeping elsewhere at this point, decided that because of the boy saying, nobody is allowed to sleep in my mom's bed. So Jason, being a 14-year-old boy, decided that he was going to climb in there and pretend to nap because he wanted to see what Danny would do. So nothing happened when he was in the bed, but then he stood up, and as he started to walk away, it was like a terracotta mask on the wall, flew across the room and smashed into the wall behind Danny. The Cobbs invited a parapsychologist named Andrew Nichols to investigate. He was with the Florida Society for Parapsychological Research. And I was like, Savannah didn't have its own,
yeah, that's
Savannah, Georgia, the most haunted city in the U.S.?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe they were all busy.
They were busy. What he discovered was that the electrical wiring in the wall against which Jason's bed had been placed had created a sort of electromagnetic field, and that Jason's head being at that end of the bed nearest the wall had activated latent psychic powers. He claimed that the bed had nothing to do with Jason's powers starting, that if he'd put a different bed in that exact same position, his powers would have started and he'd be sneaking to the other spirits anyway. I tried finding an update on this story, but only found that the reporter who originally published multiple stories of this family's experiences in the Savannah Morning News, Jane Fishman, died in October 2022 of cancer. She was an arch reporter and fondly remembered by the city residents. So my sources, The Scare Chamber, Unexplained Mysteries, Animalian, Savannah Morning News, and Live About.
Wow. I wonder what happened.
Right? I was like, hello?
How can you not follow up on that story?
I don't know. Yeah, I looked around. There must have been something out there, but I couldn't find it. Savannah Morning News apparently is not a big news thing.
Well.
So it took me a while even to find, because I could find an image about the reporter dying, but it took me a bit to actually get to the article about her. And that was on Yahoo News. So it seemed like Savannah Morning News wasn't online or something.
There's a lot of information out there, but a lot of it is not easily found.
Right. Well, and 1995 online wasn't what it is now. That makes sense. Of course, the paper wasn't online then, but maybe it's just too small to have put that all online now. But there were some of her articles from more recent times on there.
And sometimes it takes somebody dedicated who's passionate, whose purpose is, I want to preserve all of this, so I'm going to put this all online.
Right. Like if I lived in Savannah, I could probably go to the newspaper and be like, hey, could I see some archives or the local library or something?
Yes.
But I do not.
No.
Not at this time. So, yeah.
That's interesting. It just is, it's like, I'm so angry that there was no follow-up.
And I was like, well, tell me more. Nope, we will not. And the thing with little Maria is, a lot of people claim they witnessed stuff happening. Because it was like somebody who took her life, it may have just been she was troubled in doing the things.
Yes.
But it sounded like the parents reported the rocks. And I'm like, yeah, I'm an angry teenage girl. I'm gonna heave some rocks in the middle of the night. But who knows?
Yeah. That had a terrible, tragic ending.
Yeah.
But then again, her parents, at the age of 11, let her go live in some man's house.
And then at 12 or 13, go live in still another man's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting choices.
She may have been unhappy for reasons that had nothing to do with the poltergeist.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And even so, the whole rationale with the whole, at least on my end, for poltergeist following teenage girls, there's all this emotional upheaval and therefore all this emotional energy out there.
Yes.
So she could have been having home problems and could have still manifested a poltergeist. So it really depends on whether you want to believe in the poltergeist or not. Whether it was just a girl doing this herself or whether an already troubled girl manifested something.
Yes.
Yeah. That's sad.
It is.
But I'm like, Danny wasn't 7, yo.
Yeah. And don't poltergeists, aren't they more frequently girls than boys?
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought they were more common with girls of that age because they're...
Usually they don't have a gender. Usually they don't get identified. Poltergeist is typically energy. That's why...
Well, no, I meant that poltergeist manifest more in a household with teenage girls.
Yeah, but the poltergeist isn't a girl.
No.
Yeah.
I meant in a house with a teenage girl as opposed to a teenage boy.
Yes.
So, because they're just so expressive.
They are certainly chaotic energy.
Yes.
Preteen and teen girls, yes, up to a certain point.
And some of them never fucking get over it.
I didn't. I took that energy right on into my 20s.
I wish I had some of the energy that I had as a teenager.
Wish I had some of the energy I had just a few years ago, honestly. That'd still be sufficient for me. That would be great.
Yes, it would.
Yeah, thanks. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk at you next week. Don't forget to check us out at buymeacoffee.com/mmmayhem if you're interested in supporting the show. And again, that can be for a one-time donation or as little as $1 a month, and that comes with perks.
So we will talk to you next week.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram or at our website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
Please like, rate, and review, follow, and share wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. We'll be back next week with more shenanigans.